Well, we're here, we're gonna chat with you guys a little bit about really what it's like to be an athlete and to go on that journey when you have these big pinnacle moments in your career. Summer, I know you've had them, Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah.
And really for any elite athlete that's trained for something their whole life and has a very specific identity tied to that thing that they've been training with. This goes for athletes, this spans beyond athletes. But once you're sort of done with that moment, with the Olympics.
Scary, exciting.
What does that moment look like for you, for others that you've known, and how do you see those athletes navigating that moment?
I mean, I could go on and on about this subject. We have 15 minutes for our entire Candid Conversation up here, and RB and I talk about this often. But how many people watched Paris, the Olympic Games in Paris, right?
Nice.
Super exciting, the pinnacle of most of these athletes' careers. And then they go home and they have their celebrations and their parades and things like that. And then probably 4 weeks later is when it hits. And there's this downturn. We call it the post-Olympic blues. And it's very real. Some stats to throw out to you guys is more than half of elite athletes around the world feel not financially stable. A quarter of Olympic athletes are living below the poverty line. So when that hits you hard, and coupled with the fact that most people think Olympic athletes, oh my goodness, the world is your oyster, you're a sea of opportunity. But a lot of people are drowning in that sea of opportunity. So they just need a pathway, a direction. And so much of what we spoke about in Paris, many athletes were speaking up about it, was mental health. And what people think is, oh, okay, well, yes, we have a therapist hotline, and maybe they need financial support. But personally, what I think, and many of my fellow retired Olympians think, they need a bit of hand-holding and direction and a pathway to opportunity. And so RB represents Guild. Guild has come on to help support Team USA in LA 2028 so that these athletes who normally, specifically we're talking about the winter athletes, who normally wouldn't be able to, at the same time as training and wanting to win their Olympic gold medal, now they can also get a degree or have their teeth in the game to figure out what it is they want to do after their sport. So simultaneously, possibly two passions, which is totally doable. And newsflash, if you're really passionate about one thing, you can actually do better in the other thing and vice versa. We saw a lot of women who were parents and they said, I'm a better marathoner because I'm a parent, I'm a better parent because I'm a marathoner.
Yeah, I think having that next step, even if you're not there yet, having a path to succeed, and then having sort of the guidance and support along the way, because it can be really scary. And we know this from Guild and from talking to you, is that there's so much talent out there, but it's how do you utilize the talent that exists and really create a pathway for that talent to be connected with that opportunity. And sometimes it's through formal learning and education. Sometimes it's a career coach or an educational coach or someone who can help you. Sometimes it's help with a resume. And so the other thing I thought would be interesting to talk about with this group is athletes are just one example, but we see this in the workforce all the time of folks that have all of these soft skills, these skills that are kind of hard to translate from your lived experience onto a resume or a piece of paper. And it's something that we think about a lot at Guild. We call it foundational skills. How do you think about sort of agility and adaptability, problem solving, critical thinking? So much of that can be represented through life experience, whether you're an elite athlete or you're a cashier at Target or you're a formerly incarcerated individual, whatever it is. And you see this a lot with athletes. How is it that they can sort of cultivate and utilize the skills that they've gained through this immense training and then translate it?
Yeah, they didn't used to. I mean, to be really honest with you, a hard stop for a lot of these athletes was a resume, right? Fully focused every single day. I mean, I would train 2 hours in the morning before high school. I'd get up at 4:06 a.m. That's what time my alarm clock went off. I'd drive 45 minutes. I'd get in the water and swim for 2 hours. I'd go back to high school. Still had to do PE. Right, thank you.
Couldn't even get a credit for PE, huh?
No. Went after school ended like 3 o'clock or whatever, drove back. Now the commute was like an hour, and swam another 2.5 hours, and then got home around 7:30. Did it all over again. Now these athletes are sticking with their sport for a lot longer, right? And we think that, oh, they're making so much money. But as I said in the beginning, it's just the select few, right?
Yep.
So they go from this extreme of, I've been so focused on one thing. How do I translate that into an actual resume? And for a lot of people, that's a really tough, I mean, they go to bed at night trying to figure it out. Guild helps them with that now, which is amazing. But back in my day, so my Olympics was 1992. I went to Stanford University. I won my medals in between my sophomore and junior year. And I didn't go to my fall quarter. I went and worked and did stuff abroad. I actually gave up my eligibility because NIL didn't exist. And so when it came time to graduate, I was 7 units short of graduating. And I kept thinking, like many athletes, oh, I'll get back to it, right? Well, this was 1994. I was already working in television. I was living in LA. I walked into UCLA. And once the professor learned I was a Stanford student, he's like, we just don't have room for you. So I was like, all right. I mean, the internet didn't exist. So I waited and waited. University of Washington, I think, was kind of like one of the first to have some robust online classes. And I tried to find one, but there wasn't a syllabus that would match up with a class at Stanford. So they said no. And it wasn't until, I think it was like 2017, University of Utah had some classes. And I finally got the classes that I needed to finish. So the world kind of needed to catch up. But what's so awesome is now we have this bridge to help these athletes, and these skills are now being transferred into something useful in the workplace. But Guild and what you do and where your vantage point, how are you seeing employers identifying those transferable skills, not only just with athletes possibly, but with their talent in-house?
Completely. We typically see it across a couple of dimensions. You have sort of the more technical skills. Employers are really focused on those future-proof jobs, the jobs that are going to be resilient over time. And what are the technical skills that you need for those jobs? And then also in very high demand are these foundational skills. And those foundational skills are because they don't have enough managers. They don't have enough leaders. Given how much is shifting in the macroeconomic environment with technology today, they don't even have the workers that they feel like can be agile or resilient enough. And so it really does require both of those things coming together. And oftentimes the challenge that we see is that career paths for folks or getting jobs, that's not a linear path. The thing you just talked about with your education,
right?
It happens all the time with people. Same thing with career paths. People take breaks. Maybe you have kids. Maybe there was another reason you're out of the workforce for a while. And so more and more, what these large employers that we work with are seeing is that these sort of traditional career paths, they're just outdated. And you're definitely not going to get the scale of workers that you need if you keep putting these constraints on them. Constraints around the degree requirements, constraints around years of experience. There's all these constraints that today are just, I think they're quickly dissolving. And so as someone who partners with a lot of really large employers, our goal is to be there for them. Right. And we always say at Guild, if you can design for the most underserved communities, the most marginalized communities, those pockets of the workforce, then the entire workforce will be able to use your solution, but that's how you democratize access. And I think what's been so interesting about this journey with you and the Olympians is because when they approach Guild, it sounded like a really cool opportunity to work with Olympians, but it's not really our bread and butter. And learning more and more about this community, you might not call them the most marginalized communities in the country, but they are underserved. A lot of these athletes before us, they didn't have resources when it came to education or career coaching or mentorship. And because of that, their mental health rates were pretty low. And so what's really interesting is to think about how the learnings that we're getting from working with the athletes, we can actually tie to some of these larger communities that we end up serving.
After us, we have somebody who works for the NBA who's going to talk. And for 10 years of my life, I worked for the NBA. I also am an ambassador for the USOPC, which is the governing body of the Olympic movement here in the United States. So I've actually gone and talked to a lot of NGBs, national governing bodies, like USA Basketball, USA Soccer, and I will talk to them leading into an Olympic Games. And specifically, one time I was asked to go talk to USA Men's Basketball. And I looked at them and I just tried to remind them that most of the athletes on this Olympic team are trying to hold down 1-2 jobs, raising a couple of kids, just for this one moment every 4 years. And so I told them, don't miss out on going to all these sports and seeing all of your teammates on this team and fully support one another. I think the interesting thing that RB was talking about, I see athletes as huge value for every company. I work with one company right now, and I had to actually reach out to them and say, could I have a performance review? I'd like to know what I can be doing better. It wasn't, I'd like to know what I'm doing right. It was, I'd like to know what I'm doing better. Every day, every swim meet, I was required to not go back to my parents. I was to go immediately to my coach. My coach was so great. He taught me to be my own coach. And he said, I'd like you to give me 3 things you thought you did well in that race, and three things that you can improve upon. And right there, we're talking about being brave, right? Trying new things, taking different turns in your life. It's so needed. It's what makes you amazing, taking on new challenges. And that's kind of what we're talking with these Olympic athletes. It's an intense new challenge. And the support.
Yeah, one of the things you made me think about too was just the community aspect, especially not only in team sports with the team, but with your coach or with the community that sort of supports these athletes. And it's a model we've tried to replicate at Guild for our learners. Oftentimes they'll be ESL or they'll require some extra supports throughout, and that's why the coaching program was originally built out. But I'm curious how you sort of see the support of either one's community or family or their coaching. How do you see that as being extensible broadly when we're thinking about the workforce in America and really what's required for the future?
I mean, I think like athletes take criticism, athletes want to learn, we are disciplined. I mean, we love a good hard day's work.
Yeah.
We like to know our purpose, right? A clarity of purpose. If it's just come to work and we don't really know what we're working for. I remember when I first retired from swimming, I went to the gym and I looked around and I was like, what is everybody training for? Right? I mean, no disrespect. Now that's me. I'm training for life. That's what I'm training for.
Training for life.
But you do. It's like you need to sink your teeth into something, the reason, the passion. It's very difficult to go from something that you have such passion for, like a sport, and then translate that. I'm looking at Greg over here who worked the Olympic Games, and when he was talking about it, his eyes lit up to be able to work for NBC and tell those stories and be a part of it. So to try to translate that passion, that's something that you want to try to harness, which is what you guys try to do, and seeing that when you see employers looking beyond the resume, what kind of value does that add to the company?
I think it adds immense value. And we see this a lot. Again, these sort of like traditional career pathways are going by the wayside, especially folks who can say there's intrinsic value, there's talent with everybody. How do we harness and utilize that talent? We have some employers doing really creative things, including making sure that managers are the ones tapping folks, building that next generation of leaders within the business, building up those pipelines, because that's the only way that, again, the economy is going to stay resilient, that there's going to be a thriving middle class in the US, is if you can pair some of these future-proof jobs with workforce-ready talent. And we don't have enough of it today. There's a gap there between those two things today. And so it's going to take non-traditional means to get there. The paths that have worked traditionally, that scaffolding is either disappearing, those ladders to the middle class aren't there anymore, or more often, it's not that they're gone, it's that they just need to be rejiggered and rethought because the economy is changing so quickly around us. And being able to catch up, that's the work that we're trying to do at Guild, is to say you have all this talent. Either they already work for you or they're out here in America. We have it. but it's how do you, again, cultivate that talent, make sure it's resilient, adaptable over time, and it can actually meet the needs of the business.
The other interesting thing, and I tell this story a lot, is that athletes are really good in the chaos and the shift, right? You know, walking in and everything's changed. Hi, COVID, right?
Yeah.
Everybody had to really show up in a big way. And athletes thrive in that moment most times. As I said, I swam at Stanford, and the same year that I won my Olympic medals, my biggest goal was to win the NCAA championship as a team. And we had a tough task because University of Texas had won the year before, and they beat us by a little bit. So 365 days, my teammates and I, every single day in the pool, we had a saying, and it wasn't "Go Texas." It was something a little bit different. So we get to the meet, right? We are prepared. We have clarity of purpose. We know exactly what we're doing. We have confidence that and like our foundation is there. We put all the work in. We stand on the blocks. We had the greatest relay swimmer in the history of our sport, Jenny Thompson, and she was leading off our relay. I don't know why she was leading it off, but she was. And you know what happened? She false started. Can't plan for that, can you? And not once did our team point a finger, accuse, panic, anything. We dug deep. Everyone swam faster than we ever thought we could. And Stanford won after 3 days of competition.
Woo!
Let's give it up. Let's
There's
give
that.
it up.
Okay.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Like I said, this is Sports Central, so we're now going to move into the press conference part of it, and we get to ask some questions. We just have a couple of minutes. Does anybody have a question for Summer or Rebecca that you'd like to ask?
I'm really curious how you all, specifically as you started talking to the Olympians recently, how have they seen their ability to make the translation? I know you all see the pathway, and here's how you talk about your talents, here's how you think about your resume. I'm curious how they start to internalize that, articulate that in their conversations with them.
First of all, it's very individual because everybody's retiring at a different age. But no matter how many medals you won, how much money you made, or how few medals you won and how little money you made, the one common denominator is everybody's going to retire at some point and have to move on. So that time frame is so different for everybody. Their circumstances are different. It's slow. In fact, when Guild came on, and everyone who's an Olympian or on a national team will get this email saying, here are your opportunities. It's kind of similar to if you have a credit card, right? And all of the rewards that you have and how many people actually search it out and figure out what your rewards are. But many of them, most of them at this time, because it was right before Paris, it was Winter Olympians. And I had many of them that came up to me and said, we didn't think this was real. No chance was this real because their education is free. And it's even for 10 years retired. So it hasn't been available, so they didn't know it. So they're stepping into it lightly, but now they're rushing into it and trying to figure it out.
We've seen role modeling be huge. Olympic luge is like the perfect example. There was one person who clicked on the email, tried it, they're getting their degree. Now we have so many lugers who have signed up and tried it. And so what I mean is I think role modeling is so important.
Yeah.
And that goes beyond athletes. You have a pillar of someone that can go against the odds, do something new, do something different. They don't even realize the ripple effect that makes on the community around them. And so we have seen that. It's almost like a groundswell. When a couple people in a sport start it, try it, get their coach, they're like, no, it's real. It's paid for, we get a coach. Suddenly the masses come, but that's what it takes. It takes that spark.
And we've said to the Winter Olympians, you need, because Olympians will get together at different times, through intersport and all that kind of stuff. Please tell the Summer Olympians that this is real. Tell them to sign up for it. I think they're kind of worried that maybe there will be a fee later on. So when I click enroll, it's kind of scary. Am I really committing to this? Because when we commit, we want to commit. And we don't want to fail, and we don't want to give up, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's word of mouth. Yeah,
it's huge.
Oh, now we go. Okay, girls.
Okay, we'll try to keep it to the 2 questions. So.
I have a quick one. Thank you. What resonated is the mental health component from Dallas, Texas. So football is a big old thing in Dallas and Texas in general. And there's a space where some of the athletes that don't go to college in the scholarship, or that really are struggling with how to adjust with not having the aspiration of everybody getting into NFL. So I just wondered if there anything that, as we work with youth a lot, so if we need to be mindful of how to educate that to the athlete, even at a high school or even middle school levels, because everybody thinks they're going to NFL and they're not. And so
I just think it's this mentality where you have to be all in on one thing. And we just need to reteach, like that culture needs to change. We as adults know we can actually be pretty awesome at several things. I know women in the group, sorry to stereotype, but we are multitaskers, so that's what we're good at. But I know that if I was just hyper-focused on one thing all the time, and it probably seems like I was as a swimmer, but my parents made sure that the world did not revolve around my swimming. And that is kind of the culture possibly with high school football, and that tunnel vision to this one thing at the end of the road. But the journey has so many attainable, like, confidence boosters and directions and goals along the way. I think we have to change that culture and get these kids from teachers and parents and babysitters and whomever to just remind these kids that they're excellent at other things, and that's not going to hinder the goal of going to the NFL.
And that all that training they've had as an elite athlete, that's going to serve them no matter what they do next. And so how do you translate those skills to say you're going to be great at many things because of this?
So just two quick questions. I didn't catch, how is it funded? How are you able to offer this?
It's funded through the foundation, the USOPF, which is the foundation that sort of oversees the Olympic movement, funds it.
And then how can our workforce ecosystem, the universities, the workforce boards, the companies, how can we plug in? What's our entry point to plug in to offer shadows, internships?
Oh, I love that question.
I love that question too.
Apprenticeships?
I'm going to grab your card, and because I do work with the foundation, and so that's a great question. We have tried to create a database of what athletes are interested in, so that we can have companies sort of line up and be a connector. Are we liking that? Yeah. Okay, that's a great question.
It's built into our platform. So we have a few employers right now that have career pathways directly for athletes built in, but we should definitely talk after. We're always looking to expand.